Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another Adobe XD Daily Creative Challenge. That's the second day in a row I've messed that up. I don't know what's with me. It's usually hosting Adobe Live, so that's gonna roll off my tongue, but it's the Daily Creative Challenge, day number 3. My name's Howard Pinsky, Senior XD Evangelist here at Adobe, and I hope you're all doing well. If you are tuning in live here on Behance, first of all, welcome. Second, let me know who you are and where you're tuning in from. We've got Sam and Cody and Richard and Sarah and Cornell and Edith and Keith and Gabo. Welcome, everyone. Hey, Nicole from Oregon. Great to see all of you for day number 3 of the Daily Creative Challenge. So, if you're brand new to this whole thing, let me hop over to my screen and tell you all about it. So, head on over to behance.net/challenge/XD to get all the information about these daily creative challenges. You're going to see a big blue button right at the top. Definitely press that button if you want to be notified when new challenges are released. And every single day, Monday to Friday, you will receive one of those challenges. Now, usually, we run these for 2 weeks. And on the first Monday, it's a welcome class, and then you get 9 challenges in total. This week is a bit different. We're going Monday to Friday just for 1 week, because next week we are off for a holiday break. So this is a fun week, all about new features in Adobe XD, including scroll groups and stacks, and you may see both of those in today's challenge. You can also join us in our Discord community chat. If I hop over here, we've got about 50,000 designers in Discord. That's a lot of people, and all of you are fantastic. You can get information about the daily challenges. You can ask questions, share tips and tricks, see what's new in XD, and you can also share your work. So if you go into the current challenge channel, a lot of you are already sharing the work from day 1 and day 2. So definitely do that as well. You can also share your work on Behance using the keyword XD Daily Challenge. So, quick little recap. We started off the week exploring scrollable galleries using scroll groups in Adobe XD, and I will point out that I've had a lot of people ask about scroll groups on Windows. So currently, as of today, Wednesday, it works with a trackpad on Windows for horizontal. If you're vertical, you just use your mouse scroll wheel. However, probably within a week, hopefully sooner, there will be a patch released. I believe it's probably 30.2, I think it is, or 30, yeah, something like that. It'll enable click to drag for Windows as well. So if you're struggling with that, it won't be long, hopefully within a week, maybe even less. So hang tight. We moved on to the Maps experience for day number 2, where we explored how to use scroll groups in both directions. So you can pan around a map. We also incorporated components and states and a lot of different things to create a really fun experience. And today we're going to be exploring a notes application using stacks. We're also going to explore scroll groups one more time. So let me hop over to Adobe XD, and we are going to get designing. And I am keeping an eye on the chat. If anyone does have questions, definitely throw it in there. And Manas is saying, "What's good, beautiful people?" I love that. All right, so here's the template for today, and we did include a little bit of inspiration on what we're going to be working on. Again, this is a notes-taking application. You can mold it in whatever direction you feel necessary. You can do notes, you can do scripts, you can do email, whatever it might be. And of course, the theme is completely up to you. You know, day 1 and day 2, we focused all about ice cream. Today, we're going to keep on the food realm, and we're just going to do food in general. It's going to be fun and delicious. So here's some inspiration if you want to get going, and we're going to hop over here, and we are going to start designing. So I'm going to start very simple. I'm going to select my entire artboard, and I'm simply going to change the background color. And we're going to go for a nice, vibrant blue. Now, you got to be careful with vibrant colors like this, because sometimes it can get way too in your face. We're only going to be using this very subtly, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to grab a rectangle and we're going to create a container. So I'm going to grab the rectangle and just draw one out just like this. I can turn off my border, and now you can kind of see that we just have a nice subtle blue, and we can use this, I'm losing my voice. We can use this for a navigation bar. We can add in some icons in there. We're not going to do that just yet, but we will get to it. I may also want to round out the corners, so I can grab one of these handles on the inside of this rectangle. Same thing works for polygons as well, and just drag these inwards. You can go crazy if you want to. It's probably a little bit too crazy, but I'm going to bring it back just a touch. Thank you, Sam, for linking my Instagram. And by the way, if anyone missed, I have on Dribbble, I just uploaded an example using stacks for iOS 14's widgets. So if you're designing and developing for iOS 14, you may want to check that out as well. I just uploaded a shot on Instagram as well for that. And I have more in the works for macOS Big Sur and also iOS 14. So we've got this lovely looking container that we're going to use to house not only the list of notes, but also the note. Try my best to answer. If it's a technical question, might be best to go to Twitter, to Adobe Care, and they might be able to help you out. So we've got this here, and now we want to start really exploring what a note could look like. So I'm going to grab the rectangle one more time. We always grab rectangles, right? And I'm going to draw one out just like this. I'm not too concerned about the size just yet, because that will be changing once we start introducing padding and things like that. And as for the border, maybe for now, I'm going to add a little bit of a border. We're probably going to get rid of that border and add a little bit of a shadow. You know what, let's do the shadow now. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn on the shadow within the Properties Inspector. And as I've mentioned many times in the past, shadows are not easy to work with, especially if you look at some of the macOS Big Sur icons. They're moving in more of a skeuomorphism phase again. I don't know how I feel about that. Some of them look really nice, some of them not so nice. So in terms of shadows, let's zoom in here so we can really see what we're working with. You know, a lot of people do something like this. Don't do that. Obviously, the reason for a shadow is to separate this element here from the background. And sure, this does that, but it's very sore on the eyes. So what you want to do, you want to be very subtle with it. You want to bump up the blur quite a bit. You can even bump up the Y value, so you can kind of push it away. And, you know, very subtle. It still separates it from the background, especially if you have a little bit of a border. What you can also do is add a little bit of color in there. And Andrea Hawk does a really good job with adding very subtle colored shadows. So what I can do is I can sample this blue color that we've been using. Now obviously this also don't do. Drag it down. Now what I would also suggest, this is kind of nice, it almost looks like a glow, but in this case I just want to dial this back and just drop the color a little bit so it's a little bit darker, just like that. And we can play around with the opacity. Again, you want to go very subtle. If I turn off the border, it might look a little bit better. There we go, right? So it still separates it from that background. And you know, we're gonna save this as a component, so we could make changes to all the other list of notes once we get to that point. But I do want to move on. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna add a title. So I'm gonna grab my text tool, and I'm just gonna type out note title. Just for now, a little bit of a placeholder text. I do have Sophia Pro as the typeface over here to the right. I'll probably stick with that one. You know, I've been using Dunbar Tall and Dunbar Low in some of my designs for headers and things like that. My only concern with that is there'll be many notes going down the artboard, and if I have that same typeface over and over and over again, it might look a little bit strange. But again, we're going to be using components, so we can definitely test that out. So I'm going to undo, go back to Sophia. That looks pretty good right about there. Now down below, we might want the description, right? And this is going to be the description of that note. So for this, because this is secondary information, we'll definitely want to drop the size, maybe to about 16. Also drop the weight, maybe to medium, possibly. We're going to see what that looks like. But one of the most important things for this is we want to give it a little bit of room. So if we have a description that's 1 line or 2 lines or whatever it might be, we can go ahead and convert this into an area text. And I can just drag this out like that, right? And just to see what things are looking like, I can also line 1 and line 2. Now, we're obviously noticing a bit of a problem. We want to make sure that the line height is nice and simple, nice and tight, just like that, right? Let's see what this looks like. It looks okay. I might want to just, there we go. That looks pretty good right about there. I'll just add a little period right over here, double click on this handle at the bottom just to snap it into place. All right, so we've got that done. Now maybe underneath we might want some tags, and this is where we can start experimenting with padding and stacks as well. So I'm gonna grab the rectangle tool one more time. Everything's about the rectangle, isn't it? We're gonna draw out one tag like that. Maybe I'll round out the corners to get a little bit fancy. And maybe for the color, I don't know, maybe blue is really bold, It's really bold, but it could work. It could potentially work. We're gonna try it and see what that looks like. And in the center, we're just gonna type out tag for our first tag. I'm gonna change this to white, medium, and we'll maybe bump this down to about 12. That looks pretty good. We've got about 13 pixels onto the side, but we're gonna change that. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna select, if we take a look at the layers panel, I'm gonna make sure to select both layers that make up this tag. So I've got both of them selected here. You can either do that in the layers panel or directly on your canvas. We're gonna pop them either into a group or a component. To make our live simple, we're gonna use a component. So I'm gonna right click, make component. You can also do that in your layers panel as well. And you're gonna notice it pops it into our assets panel. Tag, beautiful. Now, once it's a group or a component, what you can do is you can enable padding over here to the right. And I did see someone asking that they can't find the padding option. Number one, make sure it's either a group or a component. Number two, make sure Adobe XD is updated to at least, I believe, when was padding introduced? Quite a while ago. So make sure you're up to date. XD30 is the latest version, so make sure to check that as well. So I'm going to turn on padding. It's going to automatically determine what the padding is. And I can go in here if I wanted to and maybe make this, let's say 16 pixels on either side. That looks pretty good. And now I have my first tag. You know what? I'm going to make the text a little bit smaller. And there we go. The padding rearranges really nicely. Fancy. All right. Now, what we can do, we can really start to utilize stacks. So we have one tag here. Now, traditionally, what we would do is we would duplicate one over, make some changes, duplicate another one. But now we can utilize stacks really nicely. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start setting this up. So I have this one tag selected. I wanna place them into a group. So Command or Control G to put into a group. And I'm gonna name this tags. And once it's in a group, I can turn on stack right over here in the properties inspector. And I'm going to make sure that horizontal stack is enabled. If you had many layers inside of this group, it would automatically determine what that orientation is, whether it's vertical or horizontal. And now what I can do is with that one tag component selected, all I have to do is duplicate, Command and Control D. And it just pops them over there. But what's really cool is I can go in here and I can just name this, let's say food. Now, first of all, you're noticing that the tag background is automatically adjusting. But when I accept this change, well, that was the same size, right? Let me do something different. Let's say delicious food or just delicious, right? When I accept that change, all the other tags automatically kind of bump over to give it room, which is really nice. What you can also do is you can hold down your shift key and adjust the spacing of the tags individually or all at once. So I'm holding shift to do that all at once. I can also just let go of shift and adjust them individually. So 8 pixels looks pretty good. All right, so we've got that looking pretty nice and we've got our note more or less complete, at least this one, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to, let's go ahead and name this background for the note, and I'm gonna group all these elements, Command and Control G, and this will just be called, you know what, let's go ahead and actually put this into a component, Command or Control K. And we've got here, I'm gonna just name this note, and now I can turn on padding. And again, like we did with the tags, it automatically enabled padding top, left, right, all that fun stuff. Now, of course, we have a lot of padding down here at the bottom, so we want to make sure that's consistent. So we have 27 pixels at the top. Let me just make that a nice even 26, and I'll make sure this one is 26 as well. So if I did need to go ahead and move things around, the padding of the background would automatically adjust, which is great, right? We can also turn on stacking for this entire note. So I'm going to turn stacking on. It did determine that it's a vertical orientation this time, which is great. So if I decided maybe for whatever reason the stacks or the tags need to be towards the top. Don't know why you would do that, but you can do that, right? Or if you wanted to make this longer, line 3, and you double click on this handle, it automatically adjusts the entire thing, which is really fancy. All right. So we have one note looking pretty good, right? But we may want a few additional notes going down this artboard. So just like we did with the stacks, we're gonna pop this single note into a group, and I'm gonna call this list of notes. And now I can turn on stack one more time, make sure it's vertical, and I'm going to simply grab this note and duplicate it, and duplicate it, and duplicate it, and duplicate it. And maybe one more, why not, right? It's almost like a repeat grid, but it's not, which is super cool. And because we're using a component inside of this stack, it sort of is a repeat grid, right? And you can see we have all of our stacks, all of our notes here. I can just grab this one, move it all the way to the top if I wanted to, and everything rearranges really nicely, right? But what if you wanted, let's say, an additional line of tags in one of these notes, maybe this one right over here, right? Traditionally, that would be an absolute pain. You'd have to manually duplicate that group down. Then you'd have to make that specific note larger. Then you'd have to move everything else down. I don't even want to think about that, right? But now all I have to do is boop. That's it. I love stacks. I've been using stacks for a while, long before you've all been using them. It's completely changed the way I design. Let me do that again. Boop. Wait, hold on. I have to... Oh, my boop thing's not working. Hold on. I need to fix this. My boop is not working. You know what? Hold on. It calls for a boop. So I'm going to fix this. There we go. I fixed the boop. Right? It's that easy, which is super cool. I get amused very easily. And just like we did with the stacks, we can go dive in here. We can make changes to our spacing. So I can just make this nice and tight right about there. And now we have a nice list of notes going down our artboard, right? Now, of course, we have some notes going much further down the artboard, and we want to be able to scroll through some of those. So like we explored, Natasha's not familiar with the boop. Oh, you're going to get familiar with the boop. Boops are necessary when you're designing. Boops and also sound effects. And you're going to see that in a moment, I think, possibly. I don't know. I'm losing my mind. So we've got our list of notes. The chat's going crazy. Down the artboard, and we want to enable a scroll group. And like we did yesterday and also on Monday, all you have to do is within your properties inspector, we've got our different scroll group options, horizontal, vertical, and in both directions. So I can just go ahead and choose vertical, just like that. And now we've got these handles, right? So we can control the window of our particular note. So, you know, in this case, we do want it snapped to the artboard, but if you wanted a little bit of room at the top, you can always do that. And now when I press play, I can easily just scroll through my notes, right? Very simple, very fancy. Now you're noticing, and we kind of discussed this yesterday, that we have a rounded shape here, but we have square notes. So what we can do very easily, we have this container, I can duplicate it, and I can actually use that as a mask to house some of this information. So I can just select both of those, object, mask with shape, boop, there we go. And now all the notes are masked really nicely as I'm scrolling. Isn't that really fancy? I love that. And again, you can just dive in here, even though it's inside of a scroll group, you can just grab one of these notes, move it around if you wanted to, make changes to it. I can make this larger, right? And look at that. When I let go, everything else adjusts really nicely. And I was talking earlier, you know, we used a component within the stack. So if we didn't need to make global changes to all of our other notes, we can very easily go into this component here, make some changes. Oh, that's also a component. There are updates to nested components coming at some point, hopefully soon. But I can go ahead and find this master component. There we go. And I can just go ahead and make some changes. Right? And it makes changes everywhere, which is really fancy. There's a lot of fancies in the chat and boops, and I love this. This is fantastic. All right, so let's move on to the right side of our particular note. And this is where the details of this note are going to live. So maybe at the top here, and this will be list of notes. Maybe at the top here, we might want a search bar just to start off a little bit simple. So I'll just grab a rectangle, draw out a search bar like this, because you might want to search through your notes. I'll round out the corners quite a bit, like that. Maybe I'll darken this shape just a touch. And I'll also darken the border, or lighten up the border just a little bit. Just like that. Simple and cool. I agree, Anna. There we go. So we've got a lovely search bar. Of course, we need an icon for our search bar. Now, we could make our own, but I'm lazy and I'm running out of time. So I'm going to go over to my plugins panel, and I've got the Icons for Design plugin, and I can just type out search. And speaking of plugins, I'm going to be designing a plugin on Friday. and I'm teaming up with a developer named Walter, who I found on Twitter. Great guy, and he is going to be developing this plugin. So definitely stay tuned for my masterclass on Friday. It's going to be quite fun. All right, we've got that there. Maybe over to the right, we may also want a little placeholder for our profile picture. I'll just put a blue for now. Something like that. Doesn't have to be anything fancy, but we've got our 2 elements at the top. So we have our rectangle, we have our search. So I'm going to group these, search, and we've got our profile. And we can put these in a stack as well. So I can go ahead and grab those, and I'm going to group them. Whoops, what did I just do? I'm going to group them. Top elements. I can put this into a stack. And now if I decide to, maybe I want the profile picture over to the left. It's that easy, right? You got to do the sound effect, otherwise it doesn't work. That's a lie, but who knows, right? I can also put it back over here if I wanted to. Now, very quickly, let's add some additional information. This will be note, title. Oops, we can't see it. Let's go ahead and change that. And let's make this larger, right? And I can, from the beginning, I can put this into a group if I wanted to. And this will be note details. And I can turn on stack, make sure it's vertical, and any changes I make now will apply directly to the stack. So I can duplicate this down if I wanted to. I can even add in, let's say I grab a rectangle. I can just drag something out like this. Maybe this will be for a map. You're noticing it's pushing that element, that text layer downwards, which is super cool. I can hop over to Finder. I've got a map I can pop in here, right? Maybe I want some sort of a gallery of images. So let me make a little bit of room. And maybe down here, another rectangle or a square, whatever you want to call it. It's probably a rectangle, right? And now one thing we can do is, Stacks doesn't currently work with repeat grids. Repeat grids is an older feature, it needs a little bit of work here and there. So what we can do is we can actually use a repeat grid initially, drag out a few additional images just like this, right? Hop over to Finder, grab some delicious looking images, pop them in like you would in a repeat grid. And then if you do want to utilize stacks, once the images are in there, you can simply ungroup this repeat grid, ungroup the grid, make sure all these images are inside of a group. You know what, let me put this into a group first so that stacks doesn't do its thing. I'm going to ungroup the grid, there we go. We've got images, we can enable stacking, and we can move things around if we wanted to, right? And if we needed to make all these images a little bit larger, you're noticing everything moves. It also works in the other opposite direction. It pushes everything up, which is super nice. So it's super simple and super fast to start designing with stacks. I can move the images above the map. I can move this over here. This will be called map, for example. I can't spell map. There we go, right? And you can just continue your work. And maybe we want some additional information up at the top. Maybe we want some more tags, for example. So what I can do is inside of my assets panel, I can just drag out a tag, right? And it makes some room. Hop over here, let's put this into a group, call it tags, turn on stacking, grab the tag, and boop, 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 boop. Right? It's so fast, it's so cool. And I can just name this delicious, I can't spell, it's probably not how you spell it, but we're gonna run with it. I can move this up, adjust the spacing if I needed to, and we've got a pretty nice looking note. And again, I would encourage all of you to really explore what this notes application can look like. Have a fun theme, whether it's Animal Crossing or hairdressing, food, Pokemon, whatever it might be, right? Have fun with it. And you can also go ahead and turn on, let's say, a scroll group for these images, just like that. So you can nest scroll groups in scroll groups. And let's say this map is a little bit larger, right? Just down like that. You can also grab the entire note, all the note details, and you can turn on a vertical scroll group. You can adjust the handle at the top. So now you have a scroll group in a scroll group, and you also have a scroll group over here to the left. So if I go ahead and press play, we've got our notes over here that we've created with stacks, right? We've got our scroll group here with the images, and we also have a scroll group on the entire note. And like we explored yesterday, we can put another scroll group. I feel like that meme. I heard you like scroll groups. I put scroll groups in your scroll groups, right? So you've got that. And you can also pan around this map. And of course, if this map was bigger, you can just pan wherever you want. So it goes crazy in depth. There's a lot of cool things you can do with stacks and scroll groups, and you're going to see even more of those tomorrow. And stick around on Friday. I do have a masterclass coming up. Again, I'm going to be designing a plugin, and I'm going to pass it on to Walter, who's going to be developing said plugin. But I'll also be using stacks and scroll groups within that particular class. So stick around for that. And a big thank you to everyone who has joined me today. We've got Cara and Annie and Cornell and Edith and Anna and everyone else. Thanks so much. Stick around. We've got Kyle T. Webster coming up in just a few minutes with some great illustration stuff. So stick around for that, and I will see you all tomorrow.